Hello, everybody. Back here at Five Features. It's been a while. First episode since last season ended. I think this is a time where all fans around the world, especially us Big Five fans, are kind of setting those unrealistic expectations for our teams, figuring out what's going on. And there's maybe no one ever better to do that than Jeff Neiburg here. Jeff, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I wanted to start with this. So kind of recapping of last year's classic event. I'm a St. Joe's guy, and I think it's or prerequisites of St. Joe's people to kind of hate Villanova. I don't feel that way, but a lot of fans do, obviously. And I'm sitting there watching Villanova lose to Drexel, and I should be celebrating. I should be happy. But in my back of my head, I'm thinking like I'm upset because how's this going to affect St. Joe's win over Villanova? Does it lessen that and the Ken Palm rankings, all this stuff? I think that's like pretty lame on my part, but in the same sense, it's like really important because it's kind of like college football now, where these games really do matter. And do you think fans, especially we're such into this tradition here that's so different, so unique? Like, do you think we should maybe like take a break from that stuff for like all this Ken Palm and all these ranking sites, or we kind of are forced to die by them?
Yeah, I mean, kind of a loaded question, but I would say no, right? Like the people who are interested in those numbers are going to be interested in those numbers, right? Like you want to know a little bit more about what you're watching compared to just the eye test or whatever. Or it's like it's the predictive metrics that sort of give you an understanding of how teams around the country are playing. It's impossible to watch all of these. You've got a job and you're a St. Joe's fan. I've got a job covering the Big Five. I can't possibly watch the entire country. So like it's good to have those things. But I mean, yeah, maybe you shouldn't put too much stock in them. I mean, there were Villanova's a team. Look at their Ken Palm numbers. They're pretty solid all year long, right? Solid in the sense of like in there with tournament teams in the 40s and the 30s and the 50s and the 40s.
Yeah,
they're right there. But now, if you watch the eye test, yeah, I mean that's the argument for Villanova, right? Like they weren't among the better teams in the country. Could they play with a lot of teams on any given night? Yeah, sure, but they didn't finish a lot of games. So Ken Palm numbers aren't taking a lot of that stuff into consideration. This is a long way of saying no. I don't think we should like pay attention to them less. I think like you'd be a smarter fan if you like figure out what the best regulation is for your own like intake, right? Like how much do you want to pay attention to them for your enjoyment? How much do you want to just watch the game and have fun?
Yeah, maybe I'll set like a timer on my phone, like kind of like when they give you those reports when you're on Twitter too much or something like that. I'll be like,
exactly. Super responsible way to do it.
Yeah. I want to get into sort of like your big thoughts of the classic. First of all, if you had $1 for every time somebody asked you, why was this not played at the Palestra, you might be able to retire by now. So I want to get sort of your thoughts on the promotion itself. What went well, what went wrong necessarily, or what could be improved upon, and then what changes have you heard about, what might come this year for the men's and the women's, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard of many changes. I know that the men's event is going to be back at the Wells Fargo Center. The date has not been announced yet. I don't assume the pods will be much different. I mean, St. Joe's and Villanova are going to, part of the agreement was they wanted to maintain their rivalry and their game, so they'll be in a pod together. Do they make a swap, one for one? Who's the other team? They're Penn with someone else, maybe, but I doubt it. So changes, no. I mean, I think, and for good reason. I think the event went as intended. I would say probably the Wells Fargo Center and the Big Five and people who care about revenue might have been a little more pleased if Villanova had gotten to the final. A noon Saturday, going up against the football team's home playoff game. Do you want to drive down to Wells Fargo, wherever you live, New Jersey, New York, to watch Villanova play Drexel at noon at Wells Fargo Center? Like, I don't know. So like, yeah. So in that sense, yeah, it wasn't like a complete bonkers, insane, great event, but there's a reason it's back for another year. It was not a multi-year contract. It was a let's see how it goes. I think organizers were like relatively happy with last year's event, right? Like, if you were there, right, Joe? Like the each individual game itself, if you looked around the lower bowl, it was like, there's not a lot of people here. But in totality, there's, I think they got to a number where people were relatively happy, and that was the first year, and they're hoping that there'll be some more excitement. Now, St. Joe's is going to be good, really good. Temple's got an exciting new backcourt. Villanova's Villanova. What that looks like, I imagine we might get into at some point later in this conversation. You know, Fran, like there's going to be the same amount of reasons to go there, right? And I guess it depends how the first pod games kind of play out, what kind of matchup you get in the final. Yeah, I mean the Villanova St. Joe's game is like going to be fascinating.
Right.
Already thinking about it, that's like,
like you mentioned, I think like freaks like you and I mean, you're actually obviously working. I'm just there to indulge, but like I'm there to I'm there to watch 3 games, but I don't know how big of a sell it is for 10 of my buddies who aren't as into college hoops as me to come sit through 3 games. What I would say is I think maybe filtering in towards the end, maybe the 2 final games. I think it's still a pretty good bargain for two like high level basketball games. And as far as like Villanova, I mean, yeah, you're right. Obviously, they were depending on them to make it, to at least be in the final, I assume, by when they started it. But in the same sense, it may be better like marketing this year, where it's like they're not really favored to be the best team in the Big Five. I mean, a lot of people probably would put them there, but St. Joe's, really, like you said, Temple they have a good squad as well. So
yeah. I mean, I would. Sorry, I would say off the top. I mean, I would not want to be. I would not want to put St. Joe's as an underdog in that game to Villanova. I mean, they're as the roster constructed right now, St. Joe's is the better team than Villanova.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to hear you say that. I'll make sure I clip that up. So going to Nova. Last time we talked about there being the pressure and the prestige that comes with that seat in that institution, and you said Villanova will. Misquoting you, but they won't hold the bars when it comes to replacing somebody. You really can't get it done. That's not Kyle Neptune. Is this fair to say? Because I'm seeing Villanova at like the bottom of the way too early, Big East power rankings, a league where they've traditionally and recently have obviously dominated. Is it fair to say that the last 2 seasons are like blimps in the radar, like very bad blimps, or is there any sort of inkling that would say there's in some sort of decline of the Villanova basketball program taking place right now that would make serious rebuilding and serious altercations?
Yeah, I mean, they needed to nail the offseason, right? Like you come off the 2 seasons they just had. You needed to really nail the offseason, and anyone you talked around there claimed that they still had the money to do so. It has not been a good offseason. Getting Eric Dixon back is huge. But I think Jimmy Briggs is a great basketball player. I think he can play in the Big East. It's just you go into the season and he's your main ball handler and he's 5'11", and there's questions about Villanova was a great defensive team last year. Can they be this year with this roster? The roster's not complete yet. So like all of this timeout, 30-second timeout, the roster's not complete yet. Like if they get Wooga Poplar, who they're after hard and have a real chance to get.
Yeah.
Might they still be on people's like 10th, 9th, 8th in the way too early Big East stuff? Maybe, probably. Wooga's like not that much of a game changing player, but I think he can be. I think the Shulga thing obviously really crushed them. If Shulga and Brigus are in the backcourt and you bring on Wooga and you've got Dixon and Bokai, I mean, they've got a pretty solid Big East team that's going to finish in the upper half of the conference and go to the tournament, unless things happen, and things, as we know, can happen. So, am I prepared to say Villanova is in a decline? Well, the facts say that they missed the tournament 2 years in a row. They hadn't done that for 20 years, or a decade, 10 years. And maybe longer than that, actually. I forget what the stat is, but you get the gist. Like, so that on its own, they missed the tournament the last 2 years. They are on the way too early bottom of the Big East rankings. You'd be lying to yourself if you said they weren't in some sort of decline right now. Can they turn it around this year? Ask me in 2 weeks to see what the roster looks like, and we'll know if that's possible. As constructed right now, like it would take some sort of just ridiculous stretch of basketball. Brickus just translates automatically, and Boakai and Dixon playing each other in the front court. Like it works somehow, and whatever. And Longino turns into a great shooter. But absent of all of those things connecting, you're looking at a third straight missed tournament and serious questions about the future of the program for sure.
Right. And that Showa thing was weird. So he committed, right? And then he committed back to VCU. Like, so do you know, like, anything, went inside? I know he has, like, something about personal relations that he has with the coaches at VCU with Odom. He's a great player, though.
Yeah. I mean, I was told that it was, that VCU sort of upped their offer. It seemed like one of the players they were after got swooped up by someone else, and all of a sudden there was more money for Max. There were some rumors, or some people are saying it was a credits issue. I've been told by multiple people that it wasn't a credits issue. I think the player liked the coach. They had a great relationship. They've been with each other from Utah State to VCU. Might there have been an academic issue involved? Maybe, but I was told that wasn't the hindrance to him getting to Villanova. But unfortunately for them, that was the player they needed this offseason, a ball handler, an experienced ball handler who can shoot it. And that dude, I mean, you watched him probably tear your heart out on the Saturday at the A10 tournament. I mean, he was friggin' awesome, right? Like, it doesn't get much better than that on that stage. So Villanova fans were rightfully excited about bringing that type of player in.
Yeah, he ruined my St. Patrick's Day weekend. For sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to know sort of, I mean, these are obviously kind of like vague questions, as we're not going to get too linear on some of the stuff. Drexel with I know guys like you were tapped in, maybe could have expected a good year out of them, because some of the names that you recognize on that roster last year. For me, I didn't really expect anything from them. And then they started rolling. Obviously, the early season wins, and then they had a good season. And then you have it's almost is it kind of like a reality check for them, where it's like they have this guy Amari Williams, right? Now he's with Kentucky. The other player, the guard, I forget where he went.
Justin Moore, yep.
Yeah.
Justin Moore went to Loyola, yep.
Oh, yeah. Is it kind of like a reality check for them of who they are now, as far as they're going to be for a couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate reality for any school who does not have an operating NIL collective. Drexel did not have money this year. They didn't even launch their collective until after they beat Villanova. So there wasn't money flying around to those guys. So what that is, it's a reality check for Zach Spiker, who's been a really damn good basketball coach and a damn good recruiter, and has developed a couple guys who, in this world, they're not going to stay with you because they're going to go get paid. Amari Williams' best chance to get paid was this year at Kentucky, right? I'm not trying to be mean to the guy, but he's not like an NBA player. He's not going to get. I don't expect him to get drafted. I mean, anything could happen. But you're looking at a 23-year-old who's kind of limited offensively and play defense, but that's just no one wants that in the NBA. Maybe he catches on the back as a backup center rim protector, but that's it, right? Right. So there was no way he was staying. Zach knew that, and Justin's. If you don't have money to pay guys, that's sort of the reality. I mean, that's Zach's reality now. The players they brought in were, I don't know if they've finalized their portal class, but they've at least two of their guys were JUCO guys. They're not getting guys who are demanding money because there's no money to be paid, really.
Right. Yeah. It's a sad reality for like you said, a great coach. And then when you're trying to build a program somewhere where historically it's not maybe the best, you kind of get
you end up playing Spiker's coaching a different sport than Billy Lang is, right? It's a different game. Being able to pay Eric Reynolds and Rasheer Fleming and everybody on that roster what their market is a totally different component that Zach Spiker doesn't get to play with.
Right, and yeah, that's where I was going too. What's sort of your insight? I mean, obviously they have money at St. Joe's, right? I mean, other than I think a pretty fierce loyalty to Lang, it seems like. It seemed like his guys, despite a lot of people having grievances about his results, which I think are a bit nuanced because of the situation he came into or whatever. You can have whatever take you are. He hasn't delivered the results yet. Is it? You think that's what it is that they have a great collective there? Because I know they're doing that the NIL tournament as well, which they're going to net $1 million in NIL just for playing in that thing, right?
Yeah, that they do that in 25, 26, and 26, 27. But Mr. McGuire has been, from what I understand, a generous donor. They've got
The
money.
insurance.
Yes, I would say, like, I would agree with you in the assessment of Billy. Kind of like the results are sort of nuanced, right? Like, I think last year it's fair to say they underachieved in the Atlantic 10. I think he would admit that. Uh, but that last year was the really the only year that you could have had any real expectations with them. Like, and it was fair to have expectations.
Right.
You come into a situation replacing a legend with three guys on the roster, and like you have to rebuild from scratch. And the portal world was not the same as it is now. Like, not an easy thing to do. Like, there's no wonder they won 6 games that first year. Like, it's really
Yeah.
hard to win basketball games in that conference when you literally don't have a roster and there is no like this type of transfer portal. Like, how many games did you want them to win? And then you got to build. You got to get a couple guys in. I mean, getting Eric Reynolds to getting an under the radar player like that to campus in sort of like the beginning of this sort of new era, and then having the collective set up to keep a guy like that. I mean, it's hard to be anti Billy if all of those things happen. Now, like this year, yeah, like you're gonna have a top 3 A10 team, right? Like if you go 500 in conference this year, it's a bit different, right? Like this year, I think there's real serious expectations, and they're going to be so fun to watch. Hawk Hills, Hagen Arena is just going to be a blast to be at this year. For
Yeah, that Princeton St. Joe's game was maybe the best St. Joe's game I've ever been to. I think you were there, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't sold out. Like there was still some empty seats there, and it was awesome.
Yeah. Any insight on these new guys? I know the guy Simpson from Rutgers, and then the Harvard grad transfer. Any insight there?
Yeah, I mean Simpson, good defender. I think they think he's a better shooter than he's shown so far. Um, but a player who's had some success in the Big Ten is now coming to probably going to be one of the better players, one of the better guards in. That's got to be a big plus. They'll roll out X and Eric and Simpson in the backcourt, Fleming at the 4, and then the Harvard guy's like a fascinating player for Billy, right? Like last year you had a 7-footer who shot threes, and this year you've got a 6'10", 6'11" guy who's not going to shoot a three. If he shoots the three, then something terrible has happened. Just at the end of the shot clock, which isn't that terrible, I guess. But a perfect dude to set screens and run rim, catch some lobs, and he's got like a little bit of touch down low, and seems to be a good defender too. Having 4 guys who can kind of spread the floor for you, and you can play fast and run and set screens. And I mean, Reynolds told me the day he announced his recommitment, he's staying at St. Joe's, that he thinks it's understood they're going to play faster this year. It's hard to imagine them playing much faster, but they want to.
Yeah, the guy, I'm blanking on his name, but he reminds me more of like you kind of describe as like a Edge Obina kind of player. He's going to just live on the rim and get some bodies down there.
Exactly.
It's funny you mentioned the Reynolds thing. I think of Reynolds as like he's like Superman for St. Joe's fans. Like the way he like announced that thing where he's like the name on the back or on the front is more important than the back. Like you can't ask for much better than a guy like that. Like at St. Joe's, like so. I'm super stoked, and everyone I've talked to says the guys on the team are great guys. Like Fleming, I know he's a really pivotal piece of the culture there and stuff. And is his obviously I'm not going to try to go too much St. Joe's, but I know he was also in the combine. Trying to get some feedback from scouts. Obviously, he's announced that he's not declaring for the draft. He's coming back to St. Joe's. Any insight into him as a pro, or like if any scouts may be interested in or any feedback he sort of got from that experience?
I don't have any. Sorry, no. Other than him like committing, I mean, I knew he wasn't staying in the draft. They were never worried about him staying in the draft. No, I don't know what kind of feedback he got. Yeah, I think like it's like you kind of be crazy not to, right? Like go do some workouts, and in this world you can Iron 8 that because your agent's going to for you. Like, do those things and figure out, maybe pro scouts think about what you have to do this year to look more like a pro. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he seems like a good kid. Maybe he wants to get a college degree, but he could be really. He's a sophomore, right? Yeah, he'll be a junior. He can be ready to jump next year. Like,
Yeah,
much talent, and he's a really good player. So, will certainly be interesting to watch after this year. So,
yeah, for sure. He's gotten better every year. So, I think the weirdest story is Temple. You know, Temple has their own like problems that go beyond athletics and everything we know, and there's also a lack of seemed to be a lack of commitment. It was a great article. I forgot who wrote it, but like kind of highlighted the lack of commitment to the NIL program. That was like last year. I think they made some momentum since then. And obviously they picked up some really solid pieces this year. So I guess I'm trying to think where to go with this because first you had the gambling aspect, which did anything ever come of that? I don't really remember hearing anything after the fact. It kind of just went away after they went on that magical run to the conference chip.
yeah, I mean, I've inquired about it, have not heard anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I would guess at this point we're 3 months later that nothing has come of it, but I don't know why the company doing it, which I reached out to and announce it or whatever. So I'll probably do for another follow up on that in like a week. But yeah, it certainly it overshadowed everything that happened to them down the stretch.
Yeah. So I know. How are you like as far as like an optimist on Fisher? I really like what he's doing. He seems like kind of a good face for the program as well, and they obviously got some good pieces this off season so far.
To have much many bad things to say about the guy right now. Like, they didn't have a ton of talent last year. They were one game away from reaching the NCAA tournament. The craziest, one of the best Philadelphia runs, Philly college basketball history. Good enough. They got smoked in that game because they were nowhere as good as UAB. But obviously they've got some momentum going with the collective. They were able to get a couple pretty solid recruits in the portal. So it'd be hard to look at that and the momentum Fisher has and think anything but things are going in the right direction, right? Like, they've kind of got the guy they want. He seems to be a great face for the program. Like you said, he's a local. He seems to like it here. Even if he doesn't, he's good at acting like he does. Also important for these guys to have. So we'll see like where they're ranked in the AAC preseason stuff, but I don't even know right now what success better. They're not going to be great. But they've got some experience going.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I kind of look at that like conference as like the island of misfit toys. Kind of just doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like anything fits there really. They're always changing it. Like, I know a lot of Temple fans want back in the A10, or a lot of A10 people want Temple back in the A10 as well.
It'd be fun for sure.
Yeah, and then obviously lastly we got LaSalle. Any like sort of idea about like what may have caused Dunphy to return for another year? I don't know if it was determined before this season. I know there's the reconstruction going at Gola. I guess just like as a bigger picture, like what does that mean for him to be a part of this thing still?
I mean, he went to college, where he's got a degree from. It is a place he loves. They asked him to be the coach. They still want him to be the coach. He still wants to coach basketball. And so he's here. I mean, I had to guess it's his last season, but like I would have said the same thing last year.
This year, yeah.
I would have said the same thing. 3 months ago. I mean, when he left the floor in that last A10 game after they almost beat Bonaventure, he looked like a guy who was done. He was upset, but it was like he was just like the abruptness. He kept saying the abruptness of these seasons just coming to an end, just like never stops getting to him when they happen. Right, like 10 minutes before that press conference, he's coaching and they got a chance to win the game, right? Like Deshaun Shepard misses that putback. I think it would have sent the game to overtime. Um, and then the season's just over. And like he knew the nature of the portal that he was going to lose dudes. And so it's his, but obviously the guy still likes coaching basketball. So
Yeah.
he's a great dude. And, it's not a job a lot of people would probably want, right? Like it's not like a desirable basketball location.
Right.
Might it be after they finish the renovations? Yeah, maybe. But right now he wants to coach his alma mater and he's going to continue to do it.
About like, your career as a journalist, coming into, the Inquirer, covering the Big Five space. And I kind of feel like a changing of the tides, right? From kind of like, Jensen being the guy forever, and now you're kind of coming in under him, but also with him at the same time, and now not taking his place, but obviously, being in the similar role as him, and then also kind of the changing of the guard of kind of the Big Five as well, with all these coaches that we kind of remember and are iconic in the tradition are no longer there, and then except for obviously Dumpy, which you just mentioned, but and then you also have like this entirely new landscape of college basketball as we know it, of all sports, but specifically college basketball, which we're talking about here. Is it weird for you to kind of come into something that thinking that it was one thing and now realizing that it's completely different now that you're kind of as you get more established and established?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously like a fascinating time to be covering college sports. I talk to Mike about stories every week, so I'm still using him for stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it is it's a different Big Five than what I grew up with. It's different college basketball than what I grew up with. But sort of the writing's kind of been on the wall for getting to where we're headed for a while. So I wasn't entirely unprepared for it. Yeah, I mean, I think we all probably wish it was the Big Five of, Lynn Greer the third, the second,
Yeah.
the second, um, and Cheney was going nuts on the sideline at the Palestra. The first Palestra game I ever went to was one of those wild St. Joe's Temple games. Yeah, but like it is what it is. I mean, I hate to give you like a boring answer, but
Yeah.
this like that it's there's like I'm never gonna run out of story ideas.
Yeah.
Because things are changing so much. There's so much going on, and there's always something to talk about. And B, like, despite there being a changing of the guard and coaches, I mean, the current crop of coaches are all good dudes.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're talking about changing the guard. There's Dunphy, there's Steve Donahue. Spiker's not been here for 9 years. Billy Lang's been here for 6. Like,
Yeah, really.
there's still things have changed, but they're some things stayed the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm only in my early 30s, but so I hate to use the term like been around long enough, but like being a human, like how many I don't know how old you are, but like things in our lives have changed drastically in the last however many years. But
Yes.
so I was, you always got to be ready for change, and none of this is like surprising. It's exciting, right? Like part of the reason you become a sports writer or a journalist in general is that like that things are happening and you want to document it and you want to tell stories that are related to the things that are going on in the world. So
Yeah.
all of that is to say that, yeah, what is it what I expected? Like in some ways, probably not, but I also didn't have a ton of expectations.
Right. And I asked that because I think you do a really good job of tying in the contemporary with, the historical pieces of things, providing like the backdrop context of what the Big Five is with like the craziness that kind of exists now with it. And I'm a real big fan of your work, and obviously I appreciate you coming on. And everyone can follow you. Is that Jay Nyberg or what is it?
Yeah, at Jeff_Neiburg. Yep, I appreciate the compliment too. That means a lot.
Yeah, and he'll get into you. He'll get into it with you on Twitter. So let him have it, and obviously subscribe to the Inquirer, the great institution of this great city. So thanks a lot, Jeff.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. This was fun.